Welcome to the space where creators have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. We do Rosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educator spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. Come rock with me and get down to this new jam. Reaching out to my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's the grand slam. I'm out. Talo falava, kia ora, and welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. I am so excited to introduce today's guest. He is an MC and stalwart of the hip-hop community in Christchurch, New Zealand. He recently dropped his debut full-length album, Stereotypes of a Polynesian Misunderstood, which follows the release of his 2019 EP, Underground King. Welcome to the show, Big Sima. Hi, bro.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's a pleasure. You're all the way in Japan. That's just crazy to me. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. My name is Big Sima. Obviously, I grew up in Papanui in Christchurch. I'm of Maori and Tongan descent, with a little sprinkle of everything else in there. And yeah, we come from a place up in the top of the North Island called Korero or Russell. So we're Ngāpuhi, Mitiiwi. And yeah, I'm only just learning about my Tongan side, so it's been an interesting journey. But I'm really happy to be here, and yeah, just really happy to have a chat and let's go.
Man, bro, honestly, when you were interested in coming on the show, I was like so shocked. I was like, oh my gosh, Big Sima wants to come. So it's an honor, bro. Straight up, it's such an honor to have you here. Thank you for coming through.
That's an honor to be here. For sure.
So yeah, I was wondering what the Pacific Island, or what the mix was. I knew you had your Maori roots, but then when you mentioned Tongan, I was like, oh, okay, cool. So in terms of that, are you learning bits and pieces of the culture, trying to learn the language, or even your te reo? Are you like strong in your te reo? Like what's the situation there?
I'd say I'm probably like pretty foundational when it comes to Te Reo Māori. I've got a crazy story to tell you about my Tongan side. So growing up, my mum always told us that I was Samoan. So she was with my dad, and then my dad got sent back to the islands while she was pregnant. And then, as you know, sometimes with especially in Samoa, like because my mum's she's Pākehā, but she's Māori as well. She's half caste, but back then, to aesthetically, she just looks like a Pākehā, you know. So it's when she was with my dad, obviously his parents didn't really approve of the relationship. She got pregnant out of wedlock, so again, for religious families, especially in Samoa, like him bringing back to Samoa saying that he's having a kid to a Kiwi lady, and they're not married. It was just red flags central. So he got sent back to the islands, and so I've never met him before in my life, but I've always had that deep knowing, like obviously knowing that I am Polynesian, and growing up where I grew up, a lot of people assume that I guess that Christchurch is just full of there's no PIs down here, which is crazy because there is definitely. So I grew up around a lot of PI and Māori, but my connection to my whakapapa with regards to my Samoan side, I always felt disconnected. You know, you know how it is sometimes. Especially I've been to Samoa before. When you go over there, they like you get treated different if you're a New Zealand-born Samoan. Especially if you don't know the language. So I always felt like a deep disconnection. But I still, carried on with trying to stay as connected as I could. But still, I just felt that, And then in my a couple of years ago, my mum did her ancestry, and she found out that she fully reconnected with her Māori side, with her whakapapa. So that's how we found out where we come from up north, and that's how we found out what our iwi was. And then one of her cousins sent a massive like the history of our whānau pretty much, which was crazy. So deep diving into that, I got more connected with that side, which was awesome. And then she had taken it took her about 6 months to talk me into doing my ancestry. I finally did it, and it turns out that I'm 1% Samoan.
Eh.
So
What?
crazy, yeah. I know, so crazy. So here's my theory, and like this is my theory. I'm just chucking out there, like it's just absolute speculation. But and this is actually it's not all the way speculation. This is from talking to a bunch of OGs that I know that grew up in the same generation as my dad and my mum, in Christchurch as well. You know, during the labour crisis, like around the time that like heaps of PIs came to New Zealand, around the time of the dawn raids, it's not heavily documented that there was dawn raids in Christchurch, but PIs were still getting treated the same with the pass laws, getting your passport, having to pull your passport down the street, still getting houses tipped over at like 6 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever, crack of dawn. But because I think it got sort of nipped in the butt, as well documented in the Polynesian Panthers biopic, it's like, I don't think that the stories that have been told as much from down here, but I do know that there was propaganda out saying that Tongan men are aggressive towards women, that drink and they're aggressive towards women. So a lot of it's sort of gone around there. Like a lot of Tongan men were ashamed to say that they were Tongan, So they would just go around saying they're Samoan because Samoans are slick, ladies, men, and stuff like that. That's and that's facts, all the way through. And so that's sort of my theory, and that's just throwing it out there. So I just think that my dad was Tongan, and the other theory is that because of the Civil War, because of the war, like maybe he didn't know he was Tongan, which could also be a thing too, so yeah, it turns out I'm a Tongan. It just sort of got thrust upon me out of the blue. And what I believe about blood quantum is that it's not that you're doesn't matter if you're 25%, 10%, you just are or you aren't, and that's my belief behind it anyway. And I know that blood quantum is also like a tool of colonization. Like they use it to create separatism between and elitism, like saying, oh, they want us to say, oh, you're only 25% and I'm 35%.
Right.
That makes me better than you, and we're not the same, So, yeah, I totally understand that too. So I don't really take into consideration the numbers as much, but I do take into consideration like 1% compared to like 25%,
Yeah.
because it doubles, right? So my dad must have been half, right? And then we've got heaps of Micronesian,
Right.
PNG, even Fiji, which makes total sense, for it to trickle down. And DNA works quite simply as like, they need the more information they have, the more they're able to tell you, it comes to. So yeah, that's my crazy story. But my mum, anyway, like, the craziest thing about it is my mum found her birth dad because my mum was adopted, and it turns out she had another 5 brothers and sisters, and we've met them now, and we're like become family. I'd already met my cousin before, and I never even knew it was my cousin. That's how crazy it is.
Wow.
Bro.
You got me. You got me. I was not expecting that. I was like, I was not expecting you to say that. I was just,
Yeah.
okay.
Wow, that. Yeah.
Man, that is,
Yeah, I know. It's
wow.
crazy,
So
yeah.
now you've got an even bigger family, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, my mum's birth mum, they're from a place called Temuka. Have you heard of that before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like sort of it's south, it's in Canterbury, but it's just outside, sort of like it's in the province, if you will. And so this is crazy history story. So she used to work for the unions, right? So she would go around to all the conventions and she would sort of lobby on behalf of labor workers and stuff like that. And so she'll go to lots of conventions. So it turns out that she met my mum's dad at a party one time. They had a fling. Boom, she got pregnant, went back, and so crazy, pretty crazy. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that because it had me thinking about one of the songs on the LP. But I will get to that. I'm gonna remember
yeah,
that.
cool,
I'm gonna
cool,
come
cool.
back because I have a question about that. But I don't want
Yeah,
to get too excited and jump ahead. Man, wow, that's a lot of history. Thank you so much for sharing.
Buzz, yeah, yeah,
Hard. You know, you've mentioned Christchurch, growing up in Christchurch.
yeah,
How did you get introduced to hip hop, to rap, to hip hop culture? Like
yeah.
what was your first introduction to that?
So my first initial introduction to hip hop was through b-boy.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so I used to see there used to be these things in Christchurch called skate jams, and there
Mm,
used to be this guy Chris who used to run these skate jams, and like so one day I turned up to the skate jam because I used to kick around the same cats from where I grew up with. Like we used to do everything together. So they used to have these skate jams in the Northlands Mall car park, right? And at the skate jam they'd have like dudes skateboarding obviously, and then they'd have live bands, and then they'd have a massive piece of lino, and cats would come out and break dance on it. And I used to be like, that's pretty crazy. And
right.
the thing that I was most enamored with was like just the square, like and everyone standing around and people cheering every time someone came out. And I just had to be a part of that, like it's sort of in my blood, I guess, to I don't know, like being a PI to want to perform,
Right.
and so I just clung on to, I just sort of jumped on board straight away and started to like, I was self-taught from home. I was trash for a long time, but then we made our own crew, and then we got some amazing opportunities. Like once we toured with Redken, like cosmetics. Like we did a national tour, and like they
Wow.
paid us all this money just to come out and like do like a 3 minute set, and they paid us like ridiculous amount of money. And like just the early hip hop summits. Anyway, not to go off on a tangent, but so back to what your initial question was about how I found hip hop. So definitely through b boy, and then I used to go to YCD every Wednesday. They used to have hip hop classes. YCD is a youth centre in Christchurch
Mm,
called Youth Culture and Development. Um, Pretty much everyone you can think of, every PI you can think of, from Oscar Kitely to Scribe to Lady Six to Mark Vanilo to pretty much any PI in Christchurch that was involved in hip hop music or anything has gone through YCD in some way, shape, or form, which is crazy. So we sort of owe everything to YCD, and it's still there today. It's still doing the same
mm.
thing. They work a lot with youth offenders and youth justice, which is amazing. And they also run the Christchurch Hip Hop Summit now. So they just do the best work and for our PIs and Māoris and just for our kids in general, which is great. So yeah, my first exposure to hip hop was through them, definitely. So I used to catch the bus, and Lady used to jump on my bus and Shirley, and then we all used to like there used to be a bunch of us all go to this one hip hop workshop every Wednesday. So just crazy,
Wow.
man. Like looking back at it, yeah,
And
yeah.
then, like, in terms of like rhymes and were you someone who had a notebook? I know I've asked this to other rappers that are come on. Like, did you have a notebook where you were like writing rhymes down once you caught that bug and you were like, yo, this is something I want to do? Or were you, there are other MCs, it's all up here, like they don't
Yeah.
need to write stuff down. So
Mm.
where were you at the beginning? Were you writing everything down or
Yeah, definitely. So like I can remember vividly, like everyone has got a story about how they used to write down lyrics to a song, right? And then
mm,
they used to they used to learn the lyrics to the song, and then you'll go to a party. And this is before social media, all that sort of stuff, before Spotify and that. So when a song came on and you knew the lyrics, like you were the one, And especially to certain rap songs, like all the Wu-Tang classics and all that, like we used to sit down and just like write out the lyrics, And so um I wasn't doing too well at school, but I knew that I had to get a couple of credits just to like, pass my full form year. And so my English class was like my strongest. So they asked us to do an assignment, and I did my assignment on a Killer Priest song called Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth Bible. And I basically wrote down the lyrics, and then I wrote like an essay on what I felt like the lyrics meant to Killer Priest, as he was writing them. And as I was like sort of, starting to sort of break down these lyrics, I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, maybe I could start writing. So I just started writing raps on my 1B5 in the back of English class, and I ended up
mm,
failing. Like, but I passed with my assignment, but because I just stopped doing work for the rest of the year, I was just in the back of the class like, yo, and I can still remember my first rhyme as well. It was absolute trash, but it was cool because it was really like a representation of the times. Like we're talking like this is a long time ago. Okay, this is a long time ago. So yeah, I mean for me, did I carry a notebook book around? Absolutely. 1B5 red tagged all over. Back then I used to call myself Karizma, so it was like Karizma
Oh yeah.
tagged all over it. Yeah. So crazy. But yeah, how many people say that they used to carry a notebook around? I bet you,
Um,
I bet you, I bet you Rizvan used to carry one around, eh?
yeah, I mean, well, Rizvan says that he was the one. He said that when he writes his rhymes, he writes it to let it go. So he's one of those that he's known for the fact that once he's recorded and done, that's it. He doesn't remember the rhymes. Like
True.
he lets it go. I thought that was like, I was like, what?
Mm.
Yeah. So unless he has to perform or something, right? And then he's gonna like
Yeah,
figure it out all
and
over
you,
again. But yeah.
but rehearsal is different than what he's saying,
Oh
definitely.
yeah.
And
So
and I definitely understand that too. And I think that
mm,
goes part and parcel with being the sort of artist that really talks about real life situations and like
mm,
and Rizzy's always been like that.
mm,
Even when back in the day when he was Quest, like he's always been
right.
this good. Like it's just crazy. But anyway,
I mean, oh yeah.
yeah.
We gotta get into your yeah. I mean, for real, I hear you 100, and we're gonna get into your work as well, into your craft.
Mm,
But you mentioned Wu Tang. But who were some
yeah,
other rappers that you were? I don't know if idolizing is the word, like that you were really into on the come
yeah.
up, like when you were coming up on the scene. Who were you kind of like listening to, or were you just really just trying to get yourself started and do your own thing? And do you know?
Definitely, I was enamored with like US rap, like
Mm,
like definitely big time pop, like absolutely. All my homies, everybody, we used to sit and listen to All Eyes on Me and like
yeah,
take turns at rapping verses and stuff. Like that's how crazy it was. Wu Tang, 100%. I used to go around to my bro John Hippie's house after school and would sit there and would play Triumph and would just like take turns once again taking turns at rapping verses and like even now when these young cats that I meet and they play Wu Tang and I'm like I just like know every single word and that's because
right.
it just gets ingrained in you when you're young. Definitely Nas. Like the first, one of the first full length albums I ever listened to was Illmatic, and it's because my brother had a dubbed tape from. He doesn't even know where he got it from. That's how crazy it was. I just used to go into his room. He used to live in the sleep out at home, and I used to go into his room and go through his tapes. And like got to the point where I'd been through all his Big Pun tape, his like Jodeci tape, everything. And then I got to this tape and it had nothing on it, and it was just
Mm,
like a straight blank. And I remember back into school and I put it in the Walkman, boom, had fresh batteries, and I played it, and then the train intro came on, and I was like, oh, what's this? This is crazy. And then boom, straight into the whole like that whole album is just like, and it sounds cliche to say like that Illmatic's the greatest album of all time, but for me at the time, being a young cat, like sixth form, I think I was listening to that album it made me understand like what real that to me was what rap embodied rap music was their album and like even now like I there's a specific reason why there's 10 tracks on my album you
mm.
know because when I look at an album and like a complete body of work I feel like that's just the perfect amount of tracks to have on there. So yeah, so definitely Nas for sure. Yeah.
So then, being young, brown, growing up in Christchurch, uh, at what point did you decide that you're going to pursue this? You're going to take rap seriously. You're going. Do you know? Like, at what point did that
Mm.
happen?
There was a lot of after high school. There was a lot of hazy years of being back and forth from being a b-boy to being an MC. But it
Mm.
wasn't until 8 Mile came out of the movies,
Oh yeah,
like when
yeah.
oh man, can't even tell you. And like my bros, I'm still friends with today. Like even my bro that DJs for me and plays bass in my band. We were talking about it the other day, and we're like, bro, remember that time we went and seen 8 Mile at the movies? And everything changed. Like everything changed. Like
Yeah.
people have no idea. Like the boom, the freestyle battle boom in New Zealand was something that will never ever happen again. And it was so much bigger than the a cappella battle scene, like just so much bigger. Like it was almost at the point where like it took me a couple of battles to like figure out my style. And then
Right.
once I got a roll on, like I was pretty much unstoppable for about 2 years. I think I won like 7 different battles all over the country, and so we got into this groove where like a battle would pop up in Dunedin, right, and it would be like $500 for first. So it'd be like, let's spend $150 to get down there. I'll go in, I'll win the money, and then we'll have a great weekend. So I actually got to the point where we could actually do that. Once I went to Queenstown, I went with my bro Charles, and yeah, we went down there. There was this battle at the Snowfest down there that Disrupt the System was putting on, and it was like this. The prize was crazy. It was like $1,000 cash. Like, and this is back when we were like 20, 21, so crazy. $1,000 cash, like $500 headphones, which I gave to Infrared actually. $500 worth of clothes at Cheapskates, $500 bar tab at Tardis, and then like something else as well. I can't remember. Yeah, but just crazy price. And I feel like I just mowed for everyone. Like, and that was back in my prime. So I wasn't really making music back then. I
Mm,
was just trying to be a freestyle battle, because honestly, 8 Mile was such a huge movie to everyone
right.
that if you were the man at that, no one really cared about whether you made music. They just cared about, bro, this guy's the mean freestyle battler, bro, he'll kill you. So around that time, I started ringing into this radio show on Tahu FM, and it was called Gritty Antics, and they used to have this hour like from 9 till 10 every night where you could call in and you could battle other people on the air, right? And so I used to call in and I used to call myself uh, uh, I can't remember now. It was after like Woodstock, MC Woodstock, right? Because like every Wednesday night would be like on the drinks, going to like these dollar drinks in town or whatever. This is how crazy it was back then. Terrible. And so I used to call myself MC Woodstock, and I used to ring up and I used to destroy people. And then the guy that was the host of the show, who's like one of my longest friends, um, he turned up. He like after I destroyed someone, he goes, "Bro, why don't you come in to the show and you can battle people like while you're in the station?" And I was like, "What? Crazy! All right, let's do it." So we first met up with him, and I went into the show, and they're like, "We got MC Woodstock here," and he's like, "Nah, let's just tell everyone what your real name is." And then I was like, "Yeah, it's me, blah blah blah." Just real kind of eats, but funny as well, looking back. And then because I'd won so many battles, people were like wanted to shot at me. So every single Wednesday, the phones would be ringing hot of cats that like just wanted to destroy me. And I just get on it. They'll always just be like someone like at home, like on the drinks, like whatever. And it'll just always be real funny, crack up times. But from that, I ended up being a co-host on a show eventually, and then we ended up working in TV together for 3 years as well on Māori TV. So and then we're still best friends now, which is awesome. So yeah, it's crazy. Like the 8 Mile boom was definitely where I earned my stripes, you might say. So something that's real crazy. This is real crazy, and I've only just found this out. There's
Mm-hmm.
a guy in Auckland that's produced for the first Curtain Call album.
No.
Yeah, he's
Really?
Israel Adesanya's best friend. His name's Freno, and he's on like Joey
Really?
Badass's album. He's on Vic Mensa's album, I think. Like all these
I
different
love
albums.
Vic Mensa.
And you know who else albums he's on? He's on the new Kendrick album.
Oh,
No,
what?
honestly, no cap. And this is crazy, but I won't. I don't want to go off too on a tangent. But you should look him up. His name's Freno AKL on IG.
Hey,
Yeah, it'll blow your mind. You'll be like, "What? This guy's produced for everyone." So yeah,
what?
insane. Yeah, I've never heard of him, but I just came across it one day because I don't even remember why. But yeah, it's interesting, eh? But yeah, so
Oi.
if you know about 8 Mile and you know about the impact that it had worldwide,
Mm-mm-mm.
like it pretty much was the catalyst for like there was MC battles happening like Scribble Jam and that, but they hadn't been commercialized yet. As
Mm.
soon as 8 Mile came along, bam! Like people knew that it was a huge draw card for crowds. People were turning up wanting to see And every time you battle against a white dude, it'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, and they could say anything, and it'd be like,
Oi.
oh, it's like, oh, come on, bro. But yeah,
Hey.
so through that, I ended up going to like the national finals, and then I battled New Zealand versus Australia with like Tyner and like I can't remember who was in there back then, Jay Rocher and
Mm,
stuff. But yeah, just crazy times. Like obviously, like even David Dallas. Like I remember when he won the Auckland battles
mm,
as Consci, and then he jumped on with Breakin Wreck, and then that whole
right.
thing,
Yeah, the
crazy
whole
times.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So many cats have come through and cut their teeth in battling. Like
Yeah.
even my record, like
Yeah, like were you like the whole Breaking Wreck era? Were you in like around at that time, or were you like already like were you still doing b-boy? Like, do you know what I
yeah,
mean? Did you know of those guys?
yeah,
Breaking
yeah.
Wreck and all that, or
Yeah, I was working in TV during the Breaking Wreck
mm,
era. So we brought all the boys down for a whole show. So we
mm,
brought Cybernetic, Sire, Rizzy,
mm,
who else? Sam,
mm,
flipping, yeah. And I mean, like, still being like, and I talk to Sam every now and then. Like, I just have so much respect for those fellas,
right.
like especially Usual Suspects. Like, I
I
don't care
know.
what anyone says,
I hear
Usual
you,
Suspects
bro.
are the greatest New Zealand rap group of
Oh,
all time.
I hear you. Honestly, me
Yeah,
and my brother are like we're huge fans, and it's
yeah,
just like every now and then we're like saying, "Hey, look, this is what I'm listening to." Like we still jam Usual Suspects. I
Highlander.
don't even care what
Yeah,
anyone says, man, because they were just doing something like at that time. I mean, that whole Breakin Wreck like era was just they just don't get enough like flowers. I think it's a
yeah.
pity,
Oh,
It's a real
look,
pity.
can I just say something? All right, they needed a whole episode
Oh my
on that
god,
hip hop thing. Like,
hard,
it's
hard.
an absolute. And I think I've been on a rant about this before, but like, it's
Mm,
absolute travesty that they did it because without Breaking Wreck, there's no David. Well, I'm not gonna say there's no David Dallas, but like, like even Sam PNC got his start like a
yeah.
day in the life with Breaking Wreck, and like they just like embodied the underground movement,
Mm,
and like just I just remember talking to Nedic about like how much how much trouble he had to go to just to get them like a little bit of a look in from the industry. Things have
mm,
obviously changed now, so I feel like there's more of a platform for that type of music now. And it's still out there, but it's just taken a little bit of a different shape. But even Louis, like, oh man, like just some of the music that they put out back then was just insane. Like,
mm.
yeah, being around in that era, going to a Breaking Rich show, catching a T-shirt like in the crowd,
Yeah.
like they used to throw the T-shirts out, you'd be like, "Yo!" We had our own little movement back then.
Mm,
This is before PNC jumped on with Breaking Rec, and it was called Neighborhood Watch, and it was like me, Tustin Tyler, Pucks the General, or Pucky Dunn, who else? Perceive. Um, Man, it was just a crew of like heaps of cats that used to be on Hip Hop NZ forums.
mm,
Yeah, yeah. So that was just crazy. Like this was 2001 summit. So
mm,
yeah, a long, long time ago. But the Breaking Ring, like, man, I can't say this enough. They need their own episode. Like,
mm.
if Misfits of Science can have it, I
Oh
mean,
my god, bro! Don't even get me started. Do not even get
if
me
Misfits of
started.
Science can have
Like,
a damn episode, like
yeah,
I just don't get it. I don't understand.
yeah, that
So
was a shocker. Eh?
yeah.
I was just like, who's responsible for this? Seriously, come on now.
Well, I think everyone assumes that Severe is, but I don't think he is. I've never actually
Mm,
talked to him about it, but uh, yeah, I just feel like, I mean, they deserve their flowers. They need a
mm,
damn lifetime achievement award or something, like, some
something.
sort of dedication. But this just goes to show, this just comes back to like, I mean, hip hop in New Zealand is oppressed, right? So it's
Mm,
in terms of genres, it's the oppressed minority, right? Of genres, right? So this is how I look at it. So in the industry, you look at hip hop and you say, right, everyone knows that when the festival lineup comes out, there's gonna be three or four slots for hip hop, really.
mm,
There is that are not internationals. So it's usually like Mello and GSP, who are amazing performers for festivals, like, and very experienced and have amazing music and amazing fan bases as well, which is great. And then there's usually a couple of other ones thrown in there as well. So when it comes to Christchurch hip hop, we're like, if you talk about intersectionality, we're even more, more so. And then women in Christchurch hip hop, that's where what it really trickles down to. If you want to go deeper than that, then you'd have to be doing hip hop in Chicago. You know what I mean? Because provincially, or like, in terms of where you are in the country, actually determines like your success to a degree, which is stupid, especially now with like social media, with streaming platforms and stuff. You'd expect things to be even or balanced, but they're not. So I can only imagine what it would have been like for Breakin Wreck back then. Trying to get a distribution deal, because distribution is pretty easy to get these days because it's not physical, right? So it's all digital. So you have your distribution, your aggregators out there like DRM, etc. for New Zealand, and then there's a couple of Australasian ones and stuff as well. But imagine trying to get a distribution deal for physical copies. So back then, which is what I think Nedic had the most trouble with, I imagine. So yeah, I mean, what a time to be alive it was, like definitely. But I just definitely I feel like it's a travesty that they haven't been given the level of respect or the amount of respect that they deserve. Definitely.
Why did you change your name from Karizma to Big Sima? Is it because Karizma was more like your b-boy kind of like stage name, or at what point were you, and then what is can you tell me, Big Sima, like what does that mean? Sorry, not to sound like rude dude or whatever. I've just been always curious.
Good question.
And I was like researching hard, bro, and I was like, someone give me the answer. Come on, Google. Siri, tell me what. I mean, for real, bro. Like, I had to ask.
Yeah, so it used to be Karizma, and then there was an OG that we sort of grew up with in Christchurch, who used to be in a band called Fussa, and he started calling me. He transliterated it into Karizma.
Okay, okay.
And then so I went from Karizma, and then when I lived in Australia for a while, I used to hang out with these cats, Dirty Mob over there, and Joel Woody and his brother, and Joel and Shorty, and so they started calling me Sima, and then Big Sima. And then when I came back, I was like, oh, I might as well just keep it, because when you Google it, it's the first thing that comes up, right? Like, it's easy. And it's still a connection to my Polynesian roots as well, and it's also like to my history as well. So it still is sort of Karizma. It was like Rizma, but then it's been So it's how folks say Australia.
Yeah.
For Australia, yeah. It's kind of like that, right?
Gotcha.
I don't know if there is. Yeah. So that's pretty much the story. Yeah.
Oh, I see. I was so curious. I was like, man, come on, Google, give me the answer here. No, it's not working. Well, the one time Google wasn't coming through, bro. For real.
Well, now we have the answer to it.
Wait, you need to put that into Wikipedia, bro. Get it in there on the notes, on the references. So so you mentioned when you returned to the to making music, because you did walk away from making music, and how difficult of a decision was that for you to do? Like, were you at a point in your life where you were like, man, you know what, this is not the buzz right now, this is not working? Were you just, I asked that question because I interviewed another artist, and he had mentioned, like, he was just kind of going through this phase where he was over it. Like, he was trying so many different things and nothing was really working. So he was just like, I'm going to quit. People didn't really know that about him until, we were talking about this on the podcast. So I was thinking about you, because when I was researching and that I had read that on an interview somewhere, and I thought, man, I wonder how difficult was that for you to just walk away from making music. And
I think for me it was, to be honest, like, the old version of me when I was, let's say the version of me from like 2011 till like when I threw in the towel, like 2016. I suffered with a lot of, I had really like bad entitlement issues and like, high expectations which, as you know, like always lead to disappointment in the long run, especially if you don't do the mahi internally, you know. And so I had to do a lot of work. I had to do a lot of work on myself, like in terms of my own personal growth and stuff. And I was dealing with like just feeling like I was feeling jealous of my friends getting opportunities in that, and I just hated it. I was just over it, like to be honest. Like I felt in a slump creatively. I was living down in Dunedin at the time, went through a bit of a breakup, and then came back to Christchurch, and then had this opportunity to sort of have a fresh start, you know. And I was like, man, do I actually when I first came back to Christchurch, I actually did try to like continue on, but I just felt like I was starting again, and I thought, like, why don't I just start again and do something different? You know, just for a change. I've spent so much of my time on this, and maybe it's just okay for me to live a life without this in my life. I still love hip hop. I still have my friends in the culture and that. Like, maybe I could just be a fan. Maybe I could just be a guy that didn't make it, but that's okay. Maybe I could just go on and do something else. So I started. I've always hooped, and I started coaching basketball and playing basketball as well. And so that pretty much took up my whole entire life. Like for a good year and a half, I would say. Um, yeah, I was just coaching basketball, playing like 4 or 5 times a week, playing club basketball on the weekends, and then coaching under 23s, and it was just really like a really happy time of my life. But I always just felt like, man, I feel like I could still do this, because I'm in a real good place now. But that time that I spent away from music, I confronted myself in terms of, look, man, like, you actually started to become quite toxic because, and, it was showing in my art too. So every single song was about, woe was me, and, I never make it, and like the industry hates me, and if the industry, and all this, that, and the third. But actually, like, it wasn't the industry's fault. It was just that I just kept on making that type of music, and like just expecting people to come. Like, when I wasn't putting any focus on the number one production quality, which we'll get to soon, definitely. Number two, I guess my own brand and like who I was as a person. Like, I didn't really have an identity, so to speak. I was just this guy that had 10 years prior, had done this and that, and like, but nobody really knew about it, and I was frustrated about that. And so looking back on the person that I was now from who I am now, which is probably like the realest version of myself, I take a lot of lessons from that time, and I look back and I say, yeah, okay, that's it. So now where I'm at now is I know this one thing, and that's that if tomorrow this all goes away, like all the music, and for some reason I don't do it anymore, then I'll just be happy being a dad, you know, and I'm just at peace with that. So anything that happens now is a bonus, but I don't work to goals anymore. I just work to a system, and the system is just to keep going, and like for it to integrate into my everyday life, and for it to not be the be all and end all of everything. So if we don't make it, or if this doesn't happen, like, I'll be so gutted, and like, I feel like I'll spiral because of it. But it's not even like that. What it's like is this is just my art. It's part of who I am, but it's also just my point of reference. So it's my perception, it's what I see. So I don't have to conform to anyone else's agenda. I could just be myself, um, and I'll be happy with that. And whatever happens, happens. I'll still put in the work, but I think where I've gone wrong in the past is I've had this goal, and then I've worked towards the goal, and then I haven't got it, and then boom, disappointment. Whereas now we just keep on going regardless. We've missed out on some things, and we've had some great opportunities as well, and we'll continue to have them, but we won't focus on any one opportunity as like, oh, if I don't get that, it's going to get me down. So that's the difference with me then. That's the difference between now versus me then. Is that, man, I'm just out here just doing the best that I can, and like, I'm making the kind of music that I want to make, and I'm just really happy with that. So, yeah.
And on that point, I want to talk about your most recent release, debut LP, Stereotypes of a Polynesian Misunderstood. The entirety of the album is mixed, recorded, and produced by the man, legendary Tiki Tane, who is, we'll get to him soon because he's a very good friend, mentor, collaborator of yours. It was, all of that, Tiki Dub, Solar Powered Studios. And this LP, it's about life lessons, like you've alluded to some of it already, those stories of triumph and challenges, and so forth. I read on a post, I think it was a post that you wrote that you put on Instagram, that was it like 18 months or so, like it took a long while, this project. It wasn't something that, like a few months you had it all done, produced, everything finished. Like it was a real long process. There was no rushing in it. The whole creative process from beginning to the end, when production was all done, like it was a real journey. So, can you speak to that experience, and why you were not rushed to kind of like just put
it out,
the project out there?
Yeah, I guess this project's been through lots of different stages. So it started out being Underground King 2. So
Right.
in its earliest form, it was Underground King 2. And I thought, yeah, this is what we've got to do, definitely. Like, this is the type of this is the next project for sure. And then we might work on an album. And then as my life started to go through lots of different changes, a relationship breakup, becoming a father, losing a really close friend to suicide, like all these different things started happening in this like period of like a year. And so obviously that influenced my music. So it got to the point where, and this is crazy to say this, but like it got to the point where instead of writing about stuff that I'd seen, it was actually like it was things that I'd seen, but they were happening at the time that I was writing about them. And that, even talking about that, is crazy. Like even losing my friend Maiti, like and my homies, if they listen to this, they know like how much of an effect that had on all of us. But I guess I started writing songs that just didn't really fit the narrative of the Underground King 2, right? If you look at the first EP, like back in the day, storytelling, that big shot, like, big sort of trap song, and then Rose Flow, like battle sort of vibes, keep calms, like hip hop and that. Like, Underground King 2 to me was going to be sort of like not a mirror of that, but sort of the same sort of type of vibe. It was only going to be 6 tracks, so you only have sort of a limited amount of space to be able to. And so when I wrote Neverland, like, it was like, oh, how does this fit in with the vibe of Underground King? It doesn't really have the same level of cohesion. So I was like, okay, so Neverland was the first single, and then the second one, so it went from Neverland, and so when we released that, man, like that sort of changed everything for me, to be honest. Like that song I did with Summer Thieves, and I was probably in like one of the deepest, darkest places that I'd been at that time. Just coming off my daughter being born, losing my friend, and my relationship breaking up. So it was a pretty cold and dark time, but that was my shining light, right? So when we made that, I had these young cats messaging me saying about how the song had affected them, how they'd lost friends, and like how much the song meant to them and stuff. And that sort of just like I'd never, and honestly, I've never had like that before. I've had people say, "Oh, like I love your music. Your music's amazing." Like back in the day, I had a really good response and stuff. But to have people like say that, "Oh, we played Neverland at my friend's funeral and stuff," like it's crazy. And like I think that's where I realized that what, like actually maybe storytelling is really like what I'm actually here to do. Maybe I'm actually here to pass on stories to people, and like to touch them, and tell and talk about things that are real, and like maybe this is actually like my purpose with music. It's not to be this and that, or like to be the big shot, and then the Rose Flow, and then the Back in the Day, and the Keep Calm. maybe it's just to tell some stories from my own perspective, like some real ish. And
Mm.
so I started with Neverland, and so I just started on this train of writing songs, and most of them, you hear on the album and stuff. But yeah, that's sort of where it started. And then I didn't have the name until maybe like a year and a little bit in, and
Wow.
then before that, I think it was called. Nah, it didn't even. It didn't have a name for ages. I just had this Google Drive folder, and
Yeah.
I'd just add songs to it and take them away as Tiki would mix them. And then it started to take shape, and I was like, "Whoa, this is crazy!" And then I was at my friend's house one day, and we were unpacking some gym gear out of his garage, and we are listening to Juicy, and the line came up, and it was like stereotypes of a black male misunderstood, and I
Mm.
was like, "Bro, like, could I call my album Stereotypes of a Polynesian male misunderstood?" And
Mm.
he's like, "Nah, it's too wordy." And I go, "What about like stereotypes of a Polynesian misunderstood?" And he's like, "Yeah, actually, that's pretty crazy. Like, you could use that." And like, it actually, like, the title of the album speaks to like a whole entire generation of Polynesian
Mm.
men, or Polynesians in New Zealand that have been misunderstood. Like, definitely myself, and definitely the cats that I grew up with, like even from school, like the education system, everything. Like no one really understood us as Polynesians, as Maoris, as Indigenous people. They didn't know how to teach us. They didn't know how to speak to us. They didn't take into consideration all the different dynamics in our lives, like religion, home environment, and stuff like that. So that to me was the perfect way to carry on from back in the day, from that story,
Mm.
is to sort of step into my power there and be like, you know what, like I think I could be actually like quite at peace with just being a storyteller, and still do the other stuff for fun and but this is where I want to be right now, and I'm really happy with being able to tell these stories, and I just get lots of messages from people just giving me feedback on how like stories have affected them and stuff, and I just yeah. So, and here
Well,
we are.
here we are. I mean, story,
Yeah.
being a storyteller, it's not, something that you should take lightly. I mean, it is a form of education. It's life lessons and experiences
Mm,
that are part of your journey, and maybe the journey of your loved ones and those closest to you. But
mm,
it's these stories that resonate, with listeners, even if it's someone who is just coming across your music for the first time. And I think
yeah.
a lot of the times, where these days we live in a day and age where we're just looking for the next viral thing. That's the thing, what's going to go viral. But we forget that, just how powerful music is, and your music is powerful. Like some of the topics is education, because you are talking about things like conversion therapy, you're talking about systemic racism, you're talking about childhood trauma, drug addiction, social issues. And it's so interesting. Yeah, like when you say, oh, maybe I am a storyteller, and I just got to say, bro, don't take it lightly, because it is a form of advocacy as well. It is a form
Yeah.
of activism. And though
Yeah.
you may not look at it like that, but your lyricism and your rhymes, that is what that is. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? I'm rambling, but I just had
No,
to
thank you.
say that,
I
like,
totally agree with you, and I think that's what it go when I said about stepping into my power
mm,
was like just accepting the fact that like this is what this is my purpose, you
for
know,
real.
and I'm just totally at peace with it, and I think that when I formed that identity, and I was just
Mm,
like, it was like a light bulb went on, and I was like, oh, actually, like this is what I do, and I'm actually quite
mm,
good at it, and I've actually got a lot to say, and
yeah.
it's actually like a real a moment of enlightenment almost,
Mm,
just being like, yeah, here we are, we've actually got an identity finally after so long
mm.
of jumping on different vibes and like riding different waves. We're finally at a place of peace where we could just speak our minds and like feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah, as you were dropping teasers for the album, you know, when it was getting ready to drop, you said something like, you know, I've made this album from my perspective, didn't ride no waves, didn't copy no
Mm,
styles, didn't read anyone else's notes. I just did me, start to finish, straight
mm,
authentic, bro. That was deep. I mean, and I think that that's very important, and it's going to take me to my next question, which is some of these things you talk about, these stories you're telling. I mean, they're difficult to talk about. And
yeah.
so when you're recording these tracks, like knowing that you're actually rhyming about trauma that you experienced, like how do you prepare how okay, maybe I'm making a big thing out
No,
of it,
you're
but
right. No,
how do you
you're
prepare
absolutely right.
yourself
Yeah.
mentally to lay the track, to actually stand in front of the mic and drop the track, to you know and to
Mm.
do it justice without breaking down, which kind of sounds dramatic. Do you know what I
No,
mean?
it's
Like
not. It's
how do you
honestly not. I swear to you that I have, like, on numerous occasions, especially with Neverland as well, because of the time,
mm,
um, and what I was going through, and what people in my life were going through because of some of my actions as well. So it was like a
mm,
real, like, like trying to get it off. And like Tiki will remember the day that we recorded the vocals for it, that I had to take a minute, just like a couple of times. Um, yeah, and like, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, trying to, I guess, trying to work around that level of emotion and still give a compelling performance lyrically is
mm,
real hard because as you know, like what trauma can do to you and what be when you're really emotional, it just like takes all your breath out of it takes all the breath out of you, you know. So trying to deliver like verses and stuff, it was just it was really crazy. Like, to be honest, like even in truth, like even those verses are hard too because talking about my daughter and stuff, and like um, you're. I mean, it's not dramatic at all. Like, you're just right on the money. Like, it is. It was really hard. Especially Neverland. Neverland was
mm,
just insane, and you could probably hear it in there to a degree as well.
mm,
You know,
mm,
like in the cadences and stuff. And I still listen to that song and I can still relive the moment, that I
mm,
recorded it, quite clearly. And but now, you know what? Because things are just so much better now. Now it's just a moment in time that is reflected through a beautiful song that will live now forever. So it
mm,
has actually turned into like such a positive part of my life now. Like, and things are just so good. Like, my life in general is just so good, and I probably spat on about it too much on Instagram. But the reason
mm,
why it's so good is because like my relationship with my daughter's mum is just amazing, and like my family life and stuff like that, and I just have really good people around me, and I had to go through what I went through during the creation of that album to teach me a lesson um, about I guess resilience, like big
mm,
time, like just sticking it out because far out there were times where you doubt, like there's so much negative self talk and self doubt that you have to endure during the creative process of producing an album, especially when your only job is to write the lyrics. I don't handle any of the production or anything. I just got to write the lyrics and I got to sit on them for a long time. So when you talk about before about Rizvan, about how he just lets it go, like
mm,
I've never been someone that can do that because I
mm,
actually sit on songs for a long time and go over them over and over and over them until I know them inside out because that's my
mm,
way. That's my process of recording. Is that I try not to go in. Mine and Tiki's process is like I try not to go in and read the lyrics. I have to got to know them, and then I do them all. Always do them in one take, and we don't do any BVs. So that's our process, and so I like try to. So they end up being part of your sort of life almost. So that's
mm.
why I can remember verses from like 7, 8 years ago.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, they do the lyrics to me, and like just writing in general is such a deep part of who I am that yeah, when you talk about how can you deliver that stuff without being overcome with emotion, the answer is that you just let it flow through you and you just keep going until you get it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah,
You know the song, is it Revolutionaries? Did I say that
yeah,
right? The song with
yeah, revolutionaries.
Tikitane. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then you know, there's it's that line, like every time I listen to it, that line that's like, until we fix our people, we will never be free. Like it's
yeah,
that line that is just so freaking powerful, bro. Like it's just,
mm,
and then the core, and then so we stand strong, we're calling for hands on. My people, so tired of singing them sad songs. We're standing on
mm,
picket lines for all them past wrongs. I'm talking about resolutions. Call it a revolution. Like when you mentioned your mom earlier,
mm,
and you know the work that she used to do for unions, it made me think about that song. You know, the picket lines and you know, advocating and activism and that kind of stuff. Can you just speak a little bit about that song and
yeah.
um, yeah.
Okay, so um, yeah, I mean that verse, I mean that song, "Revolutionaries" as a song to me is on the album is probably like the most important song to me personally. The
Mm,
reason being is that I guess I see the world from two different perspectives, from the normal law-abiding world, and then because of my past, I see it from the underworld perspective too. So, being around a lot of people that were involved in criminal enterprise and stuff, you learn a
mm,
little bit about the law as well. So you start to see things systematically that are happening that the government are allowing to happen. One of those
mm,
things was party pills was the first, right? So party pills gatewayed into methamphetamine addiction, right?
mm,
So the majority of our population at one point in time has used like BZP or whatever because you could just buy it over the counter at like a sex shop or whatever, Cosmic Corner. So there's a whole generation of people that use BZP recreationally. And then when the government decided that you can't use it anymore, they took it away and then people spiraled into methamphetamine use, right? Because they'd already been addicted to a stimulant, right? The next sort of experiment that the government did was synthetic cannabis. I don't even like calling it synthetic cannabis, but sinnies anyway. So they did the same thing, right? So they sold it in sex shops, and that people got addicted to it. They took it away, now, the whole time that it's in the sex shops, they're making money off the sale and supply, right? But then we have the Misuse of Drugs Act, where people go away for like a decade for the sale and supply of harmful substances. But
mm,
then they've made money off the sale and supply of harmful substances, and which has also led to a whole generation of young people being addicted to synthetic cannabis, right? So they took it away, then they brought it back, then they took it away again. So this is systematic oppression, right? Like how to oppress the indigenous people of this country is just the same as how they did it with colonization, right? They showed us alcohol, they showed us religion, they showed us
mm,
everything anything that would take us away from our cultural identity. So the reason why I wrote Revolutionaries was to say to people, look, you know, we are tired of singing sad songs. We're tired of standing on picket lines, talking about the same kaupapa over and over again.
mm,
Land back, like I've got a friend of mine, Talia, she's involved with land back, and she's just got like some whenua back, where she comes from and stuff, and like she actually inspired this song because I used to talk to her deep convos about her with her, late night, and we used to talk about um, all sorts of different political movements throughout time and throughout history in New Zealand. But the main one for me was like just how we were being like systematically oppressed from the inside out, and we just didn't even know. And so when I wrote that verse, or that was the verse I wrote first, and
mm,
then when I wrote that hook, like I wanted to say, my whole thing was, look, this doesn't have to be about anything other than what it is, right? And what it is to me, from my perspective, is that for as long as I've been an adult there's been something there for us to get addicted to, hooked on. Alcohol harm is huge, like it's crazy. Like growing up in a culture where, you go and play rugby in the weekend or whatever, and there's just alcohol there for, just at arm's reach is just, it's insane. And the level of harm that it's done. to our people and to anybody, from that type demographic is insane. So before I go off on a tangent and start talking about all my
Breathe. You're
God,
good. You're good. You're good. Just take a deep breath.
um, I guess so the first revolutionaries
Mm,
is me talking about you know the effects that cannabis has on that synthetics have had on and that story that I tell about how the cousin picks up the camera, that's an
mm.
actual YouTube video.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was curious about that.
That's an actual YouTube video. So if I can actually send it to you if you
Yeah,
want to see it. But
yeah, for sure,
so
for
that
sure.
was the YouTube video that I seen, where a family member points it at them while they're on Cine's,
Mm,
and he's like, "Look at you, you're a disgrace," and there's kids in the background and stuff.
mm,
So that was something that I seen, and that was a real eye opener, because um, man, like, how can we just be letting this happen, right?
right.
But who's actually responsible for it? When they talk about meth, they talk about gangs, they talk about organized crime, they talk about the
Mm,
1%, etc. But who's responsible for that? Because it's not us. We're not responsible for what's happened to our own people. That's
mm,
actually the government's responsible for allowing that to happen and allowing a whole generation of people to have substance abuse issues, which is crazy.
mm,
To me, it's just crazy. And then when I when I got Sticker on, who's one of my oldest friends, I've been friends with him for about 20 years. I wanted him to speak from the perspective of a tangata tiriti, the people of the treaty, so like one
mm,
of our allies, So when he did his speech, now he's got 3 degrees, and he's been through some institutional gaslighting, right? With a educational institution before, quite serious at
mm,
a serious level. So a lot of what he talks about is like, how much sort of the education, the whole idea of education is like, it's a form of oppression as well. Like, it's capitalism, right? So you go to
mm,
school, you get a degree, and then you go to school, you get good grades, you go to university, get a degree, you get a good job, professional development, all whilst you're contributing to society, right? So you're
mm,
in the circle of capitalism. So and then you die. When you die, you leave all your money to a family member, and then that family member continues on, right? So you leave all your
mm,
your everything you own, right? So I guess that's sort of what his kaupapa was. And then so we had those 2 verses and the hook, and then I was up at Ticky's and we recorded it, and then he said, "Oh, you know what? This needs like just I reckon someone to sing here. What do you reckon?" I was like, "Well, yeah, definitely. Anyone in mind?" And he goes, "Well, I could do it." And I was like, "Nah."
okay,
Nah,
okay.
are you sure? Are you sure? Um, so yeah, and then that just became what it was, and then obviously the symphony orchestra performance
Mm.
after that, and yeah. So sorry to go off on a rant, but
No,
like, yeah,
it's
it's
all
just
good. It's super dope.
yeah,
I love that song. So
yeah,
I kind
yeah,
of
cool,
I wanted to ask. I knew there was way more behind it.
yeah,
And I mean there are just a lot of gems on the LP, and I wanted to I wanted to ask because something that I really like is the use of the spoken word in
mm,
the stereotypical interlude. I'm a fan of interludes on some of these like rap albums. I'm about that. So I wanted to know like how did you connect with I don't know if I'm gonna say his name wrong. I'll probably say it wrong. Dietrich
yeah,
Swake.
Detroit,
Like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So I mean that was such a cool touch to have. How did you connect with him and get him on there for that interlude? Very cool.
Yeah,
Very
great.
dope.
I'm a huge fan of his work too. So last year at the Hip Hop Summit, there was a day where a whole bunch of people got invited to keynotes. So DJ Severe did one, Matt Brown from my father's did one. I did one. One of my bros that's on the High Council in Otako for Kaitahu, he did one as well. So we're all just in the same room. It's just an amazing vibe. And then Dietrich just gets up and he goes, "Right, I'm going to do some spoken word." And because he was the host, sorry. So he's like, "I'm going to do some spoken word now." And then he just starts doing this poem. And I was like, just boom. I was like, whoa, okay, cool. Wow, this guy's amazing. Ever since I heard Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor album, there's
Right,
like
right.
the intro, the intro where she
Yes,
goes,
yes.
yeah, yeah. I'd always wanted a spoken word intro or interlude on my album, and I hit him up right then. Like after the keynotes were over, I go, bro, I've got this great idea. I've had it for a long time, and I think that you could bring it to life. Like, would you be interested on to like recording a piece, like writing a piece specifically for my album, and then recording it, and then we'll put it on there? And he was like, oh yeah, like real, like laid back. He's such an it's just the nicest dude ever. And so he was like, yeah, I'll definitely be keen, bro. I'll definitely be keen. I was like, okay, cool. So a couple of weeks later, I jacked it up. He came to my bro's little home studio, and he had already sent me like the lyrics and then like a voicemail version of it. And I was like, when I heard it, I was like, oh man, like just so blown away. So he recorded it, and then we got Mark Smith, who plays guitar and boomtown in my band, to play the guitar, and then Tiki produced it. Um, and then we made the video for it as well, which we're going to use in a couple of live shows coming up for visuals. But yeah, I mean, it's a juxtaposition, right? Like it sort of takes you away from the rap, and that was the whole idea of it, was to have it like, right in the middle, track six,
Right.
so after backup, it just goes into this crazy like Metallica sounding guitar riff, and then boom, it takes you away, and then it goes into Neverland. So it's kind of like, yeah, it's like the juxtaposition to sort of like throw you off but keep you on, if you will. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. But he's
I
such a talented poet. He's amazing.
yeah, I mean, it was such a cool. I was like, "Yo, this is dope." I looked them up, did some. I was like, "Okay, that's what's up." But I
Yeah,
want to ask about one more track, "Living
yeah,
Proof." Um, I when I was doing research on you, obviously there were like four singles that you kind of like, there were singles that were dropped as like teasers for the album and whatnot. But I really wanted to ask about Living Proof because I listened to it quite a bit. And what is this? Not just story, but the stories behind that track. Like that's what I'm curious about.
yeah.
If you can
So
share.
yep, yep, absolutely. So the first verse is about my friend, and it's someone that I was friends with at high school, but
Mm,
I don't talk to her much now, but I have been in touch with her recently, and I said to her, "How do you feel about this?" Well, obviously, I don't mention her name or anything, but how
mm,
do you feel about me telling your story? And she said to me, "How in God's name do you remember all that?" But she
right.
said, in like detail wise, she was so stoked. But I said to her, "Look, I'm not gonna tell people who you are or anything like that. But are you happy with So I'm just gonna get that out of the way, just so everyone knows.
Mm,
But it was a good friend of mine at high school. We grew up together. She was like the homie.
mm,
But she was also like, I mean, quite obviously like tomboy gay,
mm,
like to the max. And even she would attest to that. And this was the first time that I'm encountering conversion therapy of any kind,
mm,
right? Because her dad's like big in the church, like, he's sort of like there's the pastor and then there's him, and they were from should I say the church? Yeah, it's been a while. So they were from Efakasa,
mm,
and so yeah, very very big. They were very big in the church, but just hugely religious to the max. So they would do things like they would invite boys, like for gongai on a Sunday. There'd be like lots of boys from the church, and she'd be like, "Oh, this is so and so." Try to introduce her, because they just wanted to deny the fact that she was,
mm,
that she was gay. And like she used to come to school all the time and tell us about how she'd have to put her clothes in her bag and then leave for school in a school skirt and then change into pants, stuff like that.
mm,
And because the reason why we bonded is because I have two mums, right? So my mum, I've grown up around the rainbow community hard, like
mm,
that's like whānau to me, like big time, and growing up with two mums, being raised by women as well. I've just always had more girlfriends than guy friends, to be honest. And even my best friend now, like my closest homies are all wahine as well. And so seeing this happen to her, and being there for her like all the way until her seventh form,
mm,
and then she went and got a job, and she was like, "If this, I'm flipping out of here." She actually like went on this mad research rampage and tried to figure out how to emancipate herself from her own family,
mm,
right? super smart, but she just had this idea that she could just leave her family and it'd be fine. And this is a Samoan family, and a prominent one in the community as well. So it was just crazy, like at the time, looking back at it and just thinking, this is it was just it's so inspiring to me now. Back then, I didn't understand what that word even meant, really. But
Right.
looking back at her strength and her resilience, I'm just like, just overcome with like awe at this person that just, you know, she was overcoming adversity from in all aspects of life. She was dealing with at a time where, there was people around like that we knew that they were there, but they weren't out of they hadn't come out or anything, which was fine. Like no, there was no pressure, but it still wasn't as accepted as it is today. You know,
Mm.
and especially for and I know the crazy thing for me is like having Fafine and stuff like that, but then not accepting her. It's kind of like it wasn't keeping the same energy to me. So when I started writing Living Proof, I wrote the second verse first, and I was like, I'd love to tell the story, and it was actually just the beat just took me in that direction.
Right.
Um, yeah, so I started writing about her, and so what she actually did was she worked at this coffee shop. I won't say which one it was because to anyone that grew up around that time, they'll know exactly who it is. But she worked at this coffee shop straight out of high school, saved all her money, like lived in the dungiest flat in the middle of the town, and saved all her money, and then went on her OE and never came back, pretty much. Like uh, uh she married a lady from like must be somewhere over there, I
Mm.
think, and then they broke up anyway. But then yeah, she's still living over there, and like just it's insane. So once I wrote the second verse, which we'll get to in a minute, yeah, I got into that, and it just means a lot to me. Like growing up with two mums and
Yeah.
growing up around the rainbow community, like it's just like it means a lot to me, to be honest. And I'm really glad you asked about it because
Mm.
it's sort of like to me, and because it hasn't come out, because the album hasn't come out on streaming platforms, but it is on the
Right.
26th of August. It is on the 26th of August, though. I haven't really got that hit yet for that song,
Yeah.
only from people that have bought the album, which is
Right.
amazing. But I wonder, if it's going to be picked up. I know there's a certain listener that will pick up on the storytelling like that. But yeah, that's always interesting. So thanks for asking.
Oh yeah, no, I had to ask because then like the second, then there's I think it's the second verse talking about breaking the cycle,
Yeah,
healing, like the healing process.
yeah,
And then I think you also mentioned your two moms, and I mean it was just the whole. I
yeah.
was just so curious about that creative process that kind of brought
Mm,
those experiences and those important stories together. So I'm glad I asked. And then
yeah.
your relationship with Tikitane, tell us about that. We cannot talk about this new project without
With
talking about
yeah,
the history
the bro.
behind your relationship, working relationship, friendship with the bro.
Yeah. So when did I first meet Tiki? I think oh man, I should really know this stuff. But anyway, so Tiki's wife. Oh, it's so crazy saying that because I only just got married recently. Tiki's wife's my best friend. So we went through a whole lot of just getting off drugs, like trying to go on the straight and narrow, trying to like fix ourselves. At a real like crazy time in Christchurch, like around the earthquakes and that. And we formed a friendship, and we just hit it off straight away because she's just the bomb. And she's a really like amazing supportive friend. And so when she went away and she met Tiki and they fell in love, she rang me. I was living in Dunedin, and she rang me and she said, "Oh, bro, how I went to meet Tiki? Like we've just like fully fallen in love." And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool because he's just so wicked. He's such an awesome dude, so awesome cat." And then he came down to Dunedin to produce the Summer Thieves album at Albany Street, which is a university studio in Dunedin. And yeah, we hung it, and there was just so much mana shared,
Mm.
between us. And I just knew, like, this guy's we're gonna get on so well. And we went out that night, and like, we actually spent a good 3 years just being mates because in that time I pretty much gave up music anyway. So we just spent 3 years becoming mates before we even made any
Mm.
We did make a few like random things, but yeah, we just worked on our. Well, we didn't work on it; it just happened naturally, like just being mates and like having fun and like partying and going to gigs and just having a laugh and like yeah. So it became like they became like second family to me. And this is like I said, I have to say I can't stress enough. This is before the Underground King was even born. So
Right.
this is like 2015 to 2018, pretty much. And then my birthday in 2018, August in 2018, around this time actually, he came to my birthday party in Christchurch. He was playing a gig at Winnie's down here. So yeah, he came to my party and he'd just finished building his studio at his house in Papamoa. And he said to me, "Oh, I didn't get you a present, bro, but if you ever want to make music again, I'll produce you for free, right?" And I was like,
What?
maybe this is the opportunity I've been waiting for my whole entire life. But maybe I had to go through this whole giving it up and like sort of like reintroducing myself to myself. And I was still on a journey, and like I'm still on a journey today. It's like you're always a work, as far as I'm concerned, you're always a work in progress. You know, it's never done. The work is never done. But at that point in my life, I was just really happy. I was with my daughter's mum at the time. She was pregnant, and I was like, right, maybe we could make some music. So I went home. I made this little writing studio at the back of our house, and I went out there and I started to write. And man, everything I wrote was absolute trash because I had to shake the rust off, right?
Right.
It had been so long, so I was like shaking the rust off. The first thing I wrote was "Keep Calm." So the very
Mm.
first verse to "Keep Calm" I wrote first, and then after that, so I went up for a recording session like maybe I want to say like January of 2019. No, like November of 2018. I went out for a recording session, and out of that session we got Back in the Day, right?
Mm.
So, man, we got one good song, great. And so, the next session we got Rose Flow and Big Shot. Oh, sorry, we got Keep Calm Back in the Day, and then next session, which was in like January, we got Rose Flow and Big Shot, and then the intro came after that, and then Jesus, My Drug Dealer, etc. So all of a sudden, we just like got to this point where he had all these songs recorded. What I didn't know was working with Tiki is that I always knew he was a great producer, but I'd never in my whole entire life heard myself sound like the way that he made me sound
Right.
sonically. You know, I'd always used to listen to, and this is a great example, was I used to listen to David Dallas, his music, and the way that his voice used to project over beats. And I always used to be like, man, well, how do we get to that? And that's how you get to that, was having a producer that's that good. I honestly
Mm.
feel like, and I might have a biased opinion, but just on overall variety of work and like moving through different genres and the work that the bro's done like for different albums and projects and like who he's produced for and the Cell Dub and then the Tiki and then doing sound for Shapeshifter. I think he's the greatest New Zealand producer of all time. That's my
Mm.
honest opinion. And I still working with him to this day. I'm always like so appreciative to have his time because when you've been around him long enough, you know what how precious his time is because everybody wants a piece of it. So even now after this album's finished, I'm just like, I'm oh man, like this is just a once in a lifetime opportunity. And to do two projects together has just been like amazing and he's just so good at what he does. He makes it seem easy even if it's not. And to me, that's just true talent when someone makes something that's really, really hard look really, really easy. So,
Mm.
um, so yeah.
Solid, bro. And then self care.
Yeah.
How do self care? How do you look after yourself? What are some things that you enjoy doing that have nothing that a total disconnect from music? I mean, I don't know
Music.
if yeah, like what else do you like to do to take care of your
Uh,
health?
yeah, go to the gym. I've just started back on my gym journey. You know how it is. You fall off, you get back on. You fall off, you get back on. But one thing that I've changed recently was I just started intermittent fasting. So I've been doing that
Mm.
for about a month and a half now, and it's going so great. It's going so good. Like I feel like this could be my thing maybe. And like being a PI, you know how the food comes out for dinner and then it comes
Oi,
out again at midnight.
oi, don't even get me started, man.
So when you have that rhythm, it's hard to snap out of the night eating. And I was just pretty bad for that. And but at one point, like when I was hooping all the time, and then I was probably in the best shape of my life 5 years ago. Um, and I think I can get back there. Like I actually am really focused on that at the moment. So it's getting back to physical form. Because mentally, I feel like I'm in a pretty good space. Like
Mm,
and spiritually too. I just feel like my energies are all pretty balanced at the moment. So doing this is just like, I guess for me, it's a little bit of just release, like being able to do that. Um, and what else do I do? All right. Oh, honestly, being a dad is what I do. Like definitely.
yeah,
I'm a dad for 3.5 days a week, so
mm,
um, and I just love it, and I take it in my stride, and I don't do anything else when she's around. We just
mhm.
have fun, go to the museum, go to like we have like some really amazing parks in Christchurch. She likes to go to Denny's. She's real big on Denny's at the moment,
Right.
which is just crazy to me because like I don't know, I took her there once because we were like driving past, and I go, "Oh, I'll take you somewhere." And we went in there, and now she's like, every time she comes, she's like, "Can we go to Denny's?" I'm like, that's so crazy, but yeah. So being a dad is apart from music, that's what I do. Is I'm a parent, and
Mm.
I just love it. I love it so much. To me, at this point where she's at the moment, it's like being a kid again, like straight up sitting back, watching movies, eating popcorn, like just playing memory with cards and like
Mm.
tea parties and all that sort of stuff is just crazy.
That's awesome,
So
bro. And then
yeah.
all time favorite lyricists, top five. I know, I hate these top five lists and all that, but I'm gonna ask you top five lyricists for you all time.
Okay, so in any order?
Yeah, whatever, bro. Any order, just your. I don't want to
Okay.
put you on the spot, eh? I don't want to like pressure you, but
No, I got it. Okay, Black Thought.
Okay. Oh, yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Um, Nas, Puck.
Okay.
Oh man, everyone's gonna hate me for this one. Rosa 5'9".
I love Voice the 5'9". Don't even get me started. Carry on. Carry on. Sorry. Carry on.
Oh, I don't know if I should say the fifth. Because I have to be true to myself.
Yeah,
I
it's
honestly
hard.
have
It's
to be
hard.
true
It's
to
hard.
myself. I have to be true to myself. I have to keep it 100. Oh, Drake's my fifth.
Really?
Yeah,
Oi. I've had. I
I feel like
interviewed a
I've
friend
covered the
before.
bases. I feel like I've covered the
Oi.
bases areas, so I
Yeah.
can say Drake. I see Black Thought. Black Thought's definitely like up there, for, like definitely top five.
Yeah.
Royce definitely top five. Nas definitely. Um, Park 100%, and it's got to be Drizzy, man. Far out. He's
I,
just, you can't miss. You can't miss. And so it's the production on my album. The production on my album, like the intro, like Stormy intro.
mm,
That's like that production, that beat is the ode to my appreciation for Drizzy. Like definitely,
okay.
the how it goes in and out of the synth sample into the soul sample into
Mm.
the gospel sample, like that sort of stuff. Like that's what we like that. Man, if people want to hate on me because I chose Drake, that's okay. It's not your top five. You can have yours, kid.
That's right. And you listening, Iran? I don't even get me started, but that's his top five. Before we get into your book recommendations, I want you
Yeah,
just to kind of shout out, real quick, your band, right? Because
yeah,
Boomtown,
yeah.
tell us about this awesome band that you have.
Oh
Gotta
man,
shout
yeah.
them out,
So
man.
absolutely, yeah. Massive love out to Boomtown. We've been going through this whole process of creating this live experience of the album.
Mm,
So it's been insane, and we've just reached the point now where we've made this huge amount of progress in a short amount of time. I just spent last weekend up in Wellington, sorry, the weekend before up in Wellington, and at Victoria University, and we used their rehearsal space there, and we were pulling like 10, 12 hour days just to try and get in as much rehearsal space as possible before the Hip Hop Summit, which is going to be like our maiden voyage, and then we go on tour for the whole summer. So we're doing 10 dates up and down the country. Thanks to the New Zealand Music Commission, who gave us $10,000 worth of funding to go on tour with, which has been amazing. And we're also working on an EP at the moment, which is called For the Culture. And yeah, this band is like just the most random cats taken from the. It's crazy how we came together. We actually came together because I played this festival last year, and my bro who I was talking about before, Nazarite, who's one of my best friends, he goes to me, "Hey man, we've got this band sort of thrown together. Do you want to jump up and do a couple of tracks?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." So we did this hip hop medley, right? And so I was like, "Man, this is so much fun. Hey, do you guys want to do like this album? Do you want to take this on tour? Like, would you be keen?" And so four of our band members, Jonty, Kieran, Blair, and Theo, are all at Victoria University in their last year of jazz school. So that's our trumpet, our saxophone, our keys, and our drums and percussion. So and then Mark Smith, who I mentioned earlier, that played the guitar on Stereotypical Interlude. He's from Picton. Emil is a session vocalist and an amazing vocalist he's from Blenheim, and then Ben lives in Kaikoura, Nazarite, and then I live in Christchurch. So we all live in different places. We were coming together at Picton, which is where that student video was filmed.
Right.
When I got the film. We were meeting there, and at this, like, it's so funny. Like our rehearsal room is joined on to like a diving instructor place, right? So there's just all these like wetsuits and everything everywhere. It's so crazy. But I think that in summary, like these boys, these lads that have sort of come together with me, they are about the process, And I always put myself on the same level as them and just said, like, look, let's just do this together. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be a mad experience. And because of that being our kaupapa or our mantra, like, it's just led to us being, like, really cohesive and getting along really well. And there's no egos, which is great. Usually when you got, 8 cats together, there's going to be one or two. And 90% of the time, it's someone like me with the most ego. So the main thing that I've tried to maintain, it's true. The thing that I've tried to maintain throughout is like, look, man, it's not about me. It's about, it's about the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is like, let's reimagine these songs into live instrumentation. And I just feel like we're about to enter into into a zone where there's a bit of a gap, to be honest, because even though people have live bands accompanying them, there's nothing quite like, especially going on tour. So I hope people are ready that are going to come out and see this tour. Hope you're ready for some crazy, like horn-driven hip hop is going to be out the gate. So can't wait.
Awesome. I look forward to following that from this part of the world. And then book recommendations, bro, as we get ready to wrap up. What have you got for us? I know you've got something there. So
so I got this one from the library, actually. I go to the library with my daughter quite a bit. Yeah, it's something that's sort of close to my heart because sort of, I guess, growing up on this cat's music has influenced me quite a bit, and it's a book called Prince, called The Beautiful Ones.
Ooh.
And it's a journey. This guy Dan basically set out to do this project with Prince in the last sort of couple of months before he passed away. And it's really beautiful, like the imagery in there, like it just puts you inside Prince's house with all these session musos that are all like contributing to this sort of last project that has never actually come out, I don't think. But I'm sure it will someday. I mean, like if you look at that Beatles documentary, that took Peter Jackson to put that out. So I'm sure it just needs someone to sort of like, to drive it forward. But the book is honestly amazing. Like, I got out of it, like there's lots of pictures in there, lots of photos, lots of excerpts from his diary as well, and like some of the notes that he wrote down for certain songs and what they were trying to, I guess what they were trying to achieve with like certain songs that they wrote. And also, yeah, like I said, it puts you in the room, um in the space where they were creating this last sort of like, because he was actually going to retire. Well, he was going to like, because he'd been through so much, like the whole losing his name because of how like old school record contracts would be like they want to use your name and your likeness in its perpetuity, forever. So they want to own you forever. It's like slavery on a piece of paper, pretty much. And so he dealt with a lot of that. That's why there was so many name changes and stuff, because he wasn't willing to play ball with the record labels and that. And that's something that I've always respected about him as well. So that's my first one. So definitely, I actually, this I got this from the Christchurch, from Turanga, from the Christchurch Library. But yeah, definitely highly recommend. And the second recommendation, I wonder if anyone's recommended this one before. And I'm not being biased because my friend did write this one, but it's
Yes, actually, I was wondering if you were gonna share that. I did actually have. Yeah, I mean, I've had. Yeah, I was wondering if you were gonna go ahead. Go ahead, bro.
yeah. So I've known Matt Brown for since we were kids, pretty much. So Matt and Sarah wrote this book, and when I was going through this transition stage, through my relationship breakup and becoming a father in that, and just this whole, I guess, rejuvenation of self, I learned about a little something called childhood trauma, right? And a lot of his themes in that were really confronting for me. Being a man coming out of a relationship, just every chapter in the book is a confrontation with yourself, pretty much, as a male, definitely. And I actually originally bought this for my mum, um, and then I have it now. So she's already read part of it. But I had to get, because I had to actually, I felt like I needed it more. And anyway, we've
Right.
become really good friends now, and looking at this book as a whole, I reckon anybody that's come from a childhood of family violence, and anybody that needs to begin the process of healing, but first needs to be confronted by themselves. It is a reflection, like, definitely. It's a reflection of self, and also for me personally, it was a real eye-opening ordeal to like to read through these pages and realize that I was actually, in a lot of these chapters, the person that Matt was speaking to. And through that confrontation, I figured out that I figured out my own, how I was being toxic in my life towards people. Just the real small things as well, like, real 5%, 4% things in your life that you don't actually think are bad, and how they affect people over time, like gaslighting and stuff like that. But this book here I recommend it for anybody. Like, yeah, and it is about breaking cycles, and it is about identifying parts of your world and your relationships as well, where you're the person, you're the problem, not the solution. Especially for males, but also for females as well, to have a little bit of a insight into certain relationships at an early stage that they might be getting themselves into with these personality types. And this book actually, like, and Matt's quoted on that is the reason why I've sort of, you know, I've been single ever since being with my daughter's mum, and the reason for that is because I just not ready for it, and through reading this book, I've understood why I'm not ready for it. So I've just been on this journey of self discovery, and looking internally, and I think that that's important for any male. Doesn't matter what age group you are. I just think that before you enter into anything with anybody, that you should have a really deep knowledge of yourself and understand yourself, and what makes you tick, definitely. So definitely this 100%. She is not your rehab. She is not your
Awesome.
porn star. She is not your competition. Man, these absolute golden here. So shout out to my bro and my sis, Matt and Sarah. Love you guys. Mate, love.
Thank you for sharing those book recommendations. That's exciting, bro. And then what's next? You did mention that uh, for those listening right now, the album, the LP, yeah, the album is available on Bandcamp.
Yep.
Uh, Big Sima 2K22 at .bandcamp.com. Check it
Okay,
out.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can buy it on there. But when is it going to drop on other music platforms?
streaming platforms. Yeah. So 26th of August, it drops worldwide on all the streaming platforms, and the
Awesome.
same day that we drop it on, the album drops on those platforms. We're going to drop the music video for the student as well. That we've been just sort of like holding on to, waiting for the right moment. So we'll drop that the same day, and then yeah, so it'll be accessible for everybody. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's paid for the album on Bandcamp. I appreciate you all. I did say from the start that like it would eventually ended up on streaming platforms, and then I went through this whole I hate Joe Rogan phase, which thanks to
Okay.
some of my friends that sort of talked me out of like hating Spotify to the point where I just like never wanted to put my music on there again. But they took me around, and I understand this is the way things go, and I get it. But I just want to say thank you to everyone that bought it and took in my korero of like wanting this album to be received as a full body of work,
Yeah.
um, and the art as it was designed to do so. So yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you all. So yeah.
I want to thank you. We're wrapping up now, and I want to thank you for coming on the show, bro. I know you're super busy. I know you've got lots of things going on, but I appreciate you. Like I said from the beginning, like I was so shocked when you're like keen to come on the podcast. I was like, hey, Rosa's this guy. He's famous as what? So yeah,
I've
I
seen that
appreciate.
you talked to Rizzy and Move. Yeah, I've seen that you talked to Rizzy and Move, and I was like, oh man, I gotta get on there and have a quarter. Must be some good chats going
Bro,
on.
like I
So
appreciate all of
yeah,
you, coming on board and just, supporting the podcast, but sharing, a bit of yourself. It's never easy, to step into an unfamiliar space and share, a part of who you are and especially your journey as an artist. So I appreciate the
yeah.
grind and your craft. Just to wrap up the show, I always ask our guests just to drop that. You've dropped many gems throughout this whole interview. So just final words. Take it away.
My final words are in the space of being a creative, look around you and pull your friends in that are also creatives, and create a team of people that are all striving for the same thing. And in the words of my best friend Matt Matahari, lift as you climb. So that means you pull people up, push resources out, and I think that this is most crucial for the culture of hip hop, that we create community, and by doing that we help each other out and we lean on our peers rather than the industry. So